All right, Mr. Jarrod, it's your moment.
All right, here we go.
It's
Hello,
your
everybody.
moment.
Come on in.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So we'll give this like a 20-second delay on social. So we'll give them 20 seconds to start to come on
Awesome.
in. But even when they come in a little late, they're actually starting at the beginning. So it's all good. It's all good.
I see.
Yes, yes. So welcome to TTalks, Mr. Jarrod.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yep, big day for you today, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about your big launch today. So, but I was going to say congratulations on your big launch and you're dipping back your toe in entrepreneurism. So I laugh. It's not an evil laugh, but
Because you know.
I
You
know
know
how
what I'm in
challenging
for.
it can be. I know how challenging it can be. So we're going to kick it off, Jarrod, by having you introduce yourself to our audience. And we're going to hold off on the question part for a little bit. So
No problem.
let us know who you are and
right.
who's Jarrod?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jarrod Harden. I am AKA the Belonging Guy. And so I am a belonging coach, a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner, and a facilitator. So what I do is I work with companies to help them, essentially the way that I say it is see and center their people, because we spend so much time at our jobs. We spend so much time in the institutions away from our home. It would be a shame if we're spending that time not feeling like we've got a place that accepts us, sees us, values us, and that we're connected to. So I try and help places increase their belonging.
Awesome. And you pronounce your name Jarod?
So Sharon, I promise you, whatever you say, I've been called much worse. I pronounce it Jarrod.
Jarrod.
Funny story. My mother, she named me Jarrod. She thought it was Jarrod when she was younger. And my uncle and I, we decided together that I didn't like that name when I was 3. And so she was like, you know what? I was the third child of 3. She was like, you know what? At this point, whatever. So I've been Jarrod since I was 3.
Jarrod. Okay, I'm gonna be like your mom. You're gonna be Jarrod right now. Okay, I'm gonna remember. does that just okay? We're talking about belonging, right?
Yep.
Sense of self and all of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Does it matter if you, and I'm just asking this question because
Yeah.
it came up with your name.
Yeah.
Does it matter if you're called Jarrod or Jarod or does that affect one's sense of belonging and just the way how our names are pronounced, or do we feel less respected when people don't make the effort
Whoa.
to
I
pronounce our name?
love that question. So the cheat answer, but it's the true answer, is it depends on the person. And the reason I say that is because there are so many people who've said my name wrong and pronounced it incorrectly. I know that what you're doing is you're going off of what does it look like and what is my reference point. It's not about me. So I don't take it personal at all. Like if it happens daily, right? And it happens even with people that I know really well. So for me, it doesn't mean that. But what I do think there are people who think that, oh, if you're not trying or you're not investing the time in doing that, then how you perceive me isn't as valued as I want to feel. And so I'm not someone who takes it that way at all. There are people who actually fight more fiercely for the pronunciation of my name when they hear mispronounced than I do, because I just think it's a name. Like, treat me good.
Yes. Someone just said, from LinkedIn, I always ask if I'm not sure. And that's a good point. It's this LinkedIn user. It's a good point because that's why I ask, because I'm really bad at people's names a lot of time, and I always feel like I hope they don't think I'm disrespecting them, know. So that's, as we're talking about belonging, I thought, let me put that question up front.
That.
And so, yes, someone here on LinkedIn said I always ask if I'm not sure. I think that's a good place to start.
Well, I give people grace too, though, because you've seen names where it looks like a name that you know. And so you might read it as something you know. And then it's like, oh, no, this is a long vowel sound versus. So you might not know to ask, right? And so it's in context is so important. The way that you and I have engaged, I would never think that you were being disrespectful because of the warmth that you've shown me. So, but it's not easy. This people stuff is complex.
It's very complex, and and Jarrod, we are actually getting off our topic.
I know
this rabbit hole here, but it's something that we talk about at my company when giving feedback and when having difficult conversations. Sure. We talk about who is talking to you? Just like you said, who is it coming from? It makes a difference how things land, right? Because it's going to be that trust. Like you said, we've been talking. This is not our first conversation today,
Right.
so we kind of have like a little bit of a relationship. So we kind of know each other. So it does matter who is giving you that feedback or
100%.
mispronouncing your name. But let's get back to belonging.
Okay, let's talk belonging.
What is belonging? And by the way, congratulations on launching that company again today. I mean, I keep saying it, but I really respect people who venture out in entrepreneurism. So what is belonging?
All right, so I'll preface really quick. It's so interesting because belonging is one of those things that when you ask people about, most often they go to what it isn't, right? They know that feeling of when they don't belong. And so for me, belonging in, there's semantics about it. So it's about feeling valued, feeling like you can be yourself in a room where you don't, one of my favorite quotes about it is, it's not about fitting in. So I don't have to pretend to be something else because when I fit in, I shrink. But when I bring who I am to the table, I have a place. And there's a think tank called Google, and they created a study, and they have 4 elements of belonging. I call it the belonging equation because I think you need all 4. Belonging is about feeling seen, feeling connected, feeling supported, and feeling proud. And when you think of those 4 together, that creates true belonging. And I've got some, I can give you some examples of that. But I think if you're okay with it, let's turn this on the audience for a second.
Okay.
All right. So anybody who is watching right now, first, thank you for watching. But I want to ask you, please put in the chat a place or a time where you felt like you really belong. So we're going to get some endorphins going too, because it feels good when you think about those places where you really belong. Don't be shy. So type it in the chat and I'll jog your memory. So often when I ask this question, sometimes people will say like, in my youth group or at my church or when I'm with my family or when I'm with my group of friends, that sort of thing. So go ahead and put in the chat.
We'll give them some time to catch up. You said something that's very interesting. You said when you fit in, you shrink. Yeah. I think that's very interesting. Yeah. Because people are always trying to fit in, right? And you're saying when you fit in, you actually shrink. Yeah. That is something that's worth exploring a little bit more.
Yeah, I was gonna say, think about when you try to fit in, you're like, what part of myself do I need to hide? What part of myself am I not bringing to this right now? Like, I want them to think I'm like them, and so what parts of myself am I not honoring, right? And that's not what belonging is. Belonging isn't about fitting in.
Awesome. Okay, that's good. That's good. And you said belonging is when you're seen, you feel connected, supported, and proud.
Yes.
Kayla says, okay, I'm just going to put it. She says she feels belonging when she's with her sister.
Oh, exactly. And connection is what I go to right away when I hear that, right? Because like you've got the same family unit, so there's that connection that way. So you know each other. That's incredible.
And Peter said Peter's a scientist on our team. He says when he's with his total health crew.
So we got total health work in the belonging.
Like he belongs. And Dominic Brown, I don't know if it's someone who you know, he says, I felt like I belonged at work when someone remembered a snack I liked and brought it to me at my desk. Now that's really true. Yeah. Dominic, thank you for watching. But that is so true. That is such a, that's such a big impact. And I think for those of us who work in the workplace and who are still actually going to a physical location, as Dominic says, when someone remembered a snack I liked and brought it to me at my desk, I mean, there's no greater sense of connection than like, wow, someone actually cares for me and remembers my preferences. And Peter says again with his family. Yeah. So yeah.
It's that element of you matter. All right, so Sharon, you were not off the hook, my friend.
Where do I?
When's the time when you feel like you really belong? What's that group like?
So other than, with my family, which is a kind of like a given for me, I would say I had a conference last year, a women's conference. It was a faith conference. And when I was in that 2-day conference, it was my first one, I felt like this is where I belong. Yeah. This is what I should be doing. This brings out every passion and purpose inside my body.
Wow.
And so, as I'm having another one this year, and I, looked at the church and I'm like, I belong here. Of course, my family and with friends and, family gathering and stuff, but that feeling at that, in that church, I don't know. It just, there's nothing like it.
Okay, I know the whole audience will be able to tell, even the motions you did with your body, it was opening. It was about more. It wasn't about like closing off and being less of yourself, even thinking about that.
Yes.
Yes.
It expanded me. It expanded me. I felt bigger than, I don't know. I just felt big. My husband is watching. He said, I feel connected when I'm serving others in or out of church. This other person says, I am fortunate to be working with a company that values belonging and DEI. The company's called Aquent. Yeah. For the first time, I feel like I don't have to shrink. Good point. Oh. Yes.
Doesn't that, and the relief that you feel there too, right? When it liberates you to that point.
Yes. And Peter says, great point, Sharon. Belonging is you doing what you feel you were meant to do. And maybe that's what, maybe that's exactly what it is as Peter described it. I felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. So this is like I was supposed to be doing
and around people supporting that. And so one of the things that I always talk about too is this year, the Surgeon General released a study and it said we have a loneliness epidemic in the United States. And what that is, and it's causing adverse reactions. It's on par with things like obesity, heart disease, because it's so bad for us. And the notion of this, the answer is social connection. So all of these answers that people have talked about are these connections that we're talking about is a panacea for some of what's going on, particularly with this loneliness epidemic.
Another user said, I love this conversation. Even discussions like this can make one feel seen. It's, this user, I'm sorry, LinkedIn user, it just says LinkedIn user. So I don't know who you are. It's just not coming up as a name. But I think the what you said here about being seen, feeling seen, I think the whole sense of belonging, Jarrod, Jarrod having me think
it works. We're good.
The whole sense of belonging is about being seen, and again, being appreciated and being recognized and being valued.
Yeah.
It's just so important. People really, really, respond to that.
So let me tell you though. So there's one thing. So everybody watching, you are not off the hook. So here's what you got to do. Understanding, and Dominic, I loved your example of somebody bringing the snacks to you. What that shows us is belonging is something we can create too. And we can do that for others. Sharon, when your husband said he likes serving people, imagine the type of community and the type of support he's making other people feel. So we all have the power. I think sometimes we think, oh, if I'm at my job and my job's not doing a thing for me, then there should be more belonging here and shame on them. Well, it's like, okay, well, what are you doing to impact belonging as well? And that's not admonishing anybody, but we all do have the power to create these systems for each other.
Talk about that some more. I like that because, a lot of us are finger pointers, right? and know that you're an entrepreneur and you'll maybe one day have staff, right?
Yeah.
This is about us taking personal responsibility. Something me and my husband push all the time. Yeah. So rather than pointing to the boss, like I don't feel belonging here. What can give us some practical steps of what can people do to create that community within their workplace?
I love that question. All right. So I think what stops people is they think that it's so big, right? Like it feels like, how am I going to create an environment or a community of belonging? And it's so easy. So I'm going back to the Dominic example to start. It's as easy as a candy bar or a pack of potato chips, or you know what I mean? Something that just says, I see you. Like, I know that you want a water bottle, right? I got water for myself. Think of if you go work out, like running or hiking with a friend, and they bring a water for you. If you pick them up or they pick you up in the car and there's a water for you. Right. I thought of you. You were considered. So that's a small thing. Let me go a little bit bigger. So there's a gentleman. I'm going to call out his name. His name is Ross Sabbath. And we used to work together at a previous company. And Ross started an employee resource group. And now for anyone who doesn't know, employee resource groups are employees who gather together around an identity. So it might be women employees or Black employees. There's a whole slew of them. Yeah. Well, Ross started a group for cancer survivors and people and cancer supporters. So people who were, it could be maybe your spouse that was dealing with cancer journey or whatever. And so the employee resource group, it was solely about providing support to people who were in the company who might be on a cancer journey. And what's so special about it was all he did was start it with an idea and the support of the company, of course. And it ran the gamut from anywhere is this, if I received a diagnosis or someone in my family received a diagnosis, nobody reached out to me and said, hey, I heard this about you. The information was made available. And then I had the opportunity to reach out and I could call someone and say, well, what was your journey like? Or I'm really confused. I'm a little scared. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how to navigate this. Even with the health insurance and the beauty of it being at your company, they've got the same health benefits as you oftentimes, you know what I mean? Right. So it's even navigating providers and things about, oh, well, you want to watch out for this. And so that journey, reaching out and being a support system. So employee resource groups, I could talk about them all day too, because they are a great source of belonging for a lot of people. And then I'll give one more example because I just get so excited about this kind of stuff. The employee resource group partnered, so the cancer support employee resource group partnered with the Black group. And what they did was for Black History Month, they talked about the National Bone Marrow Donor Registry. Because what happens is in the Black community, and I can say my Black experience has been, we don't talk about like donating bone marrow. Like I can count on one hand and I wouldn't need any fingers the amount of times that someone in my family said, let's go donate bone marrow. Right. But what happens is that results in the donor registry. There's a Black person only has a 23% chance of finding a match, where somebody white has a chance, 77% chance. Even someone who's Hispanic or Latino background has a 46% chance. So even double. And so just the awareness, that's another thing that employee resource groups can do. And again, it's a way to facilitate this. I see you.
Right. And it's also a way for you as an employee to take responsibility, right? If your company is open, right, absolutely, and you have an idea of an affinity group or something, you can be the pioneer of that. And I really don't love
to cost money.
And it doesn't exactly. I love self-empowerment. I love personal responsibility as it relates to employees. So Sarah, who's a founder of Total Health and my partner in crime on this show, she said, I'm enjoying this podcast so much. Yes, when I read this loneliness from the Surgeon General, I identified so deeply. She identified so deeply. I work in a place where I'm surrounded by so many, and I often feel so alone. The energy in your voice and passion from your heart is contagious, and I'd love to have you speak at our program.
All right, Sarah, I got a little like goosebumps on my arm. I have to tell you, so I understand so much what you're talking about, because for me, even right, starting the business, so much of it is me in my home in front of my computer. And I like people. Like I need people. I'm a community guy. Like I'm really outgoing. I'm an extrovert who has like introvert moments every now and again. And so that lack of connection, and you take it for granted sometimes. Sometimes it's just about being in an office and you're not even working on the same projects with people, but having people around and that. So Sarah, I completely understand. Oh yeah, and Ross, he's a great guy.
Yes. So when you're done, you got to go back and tag him in the comments, because we're going to share information. And here's a point that Sarah made. She said, I am surrounded by so many, and I often feel so alone. Yeah. And we talk about this, you and I, Jarrod, we talk about getting a diagnosis, right? And what does that do to your sense of belonging? Yeah. You know, so why don't you talk a little bit more about that? You know, like how does that impact getting on a diagnosis? How can that impact your sense of belonging?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we talk about, is, especially in the belonging world, is intersectionality. And it's a big word, but to make it very simple, it's just about the different levels of identity that you have coming together. So Sharon, you are a woman, but you're also a woman of Caribbean descent. You're also, you know what I mean? And so there are different identities that come together. And intersectionally, they're a layer of identity. So often we think it's about gender, it's about color or race, it's about sexual orientation. But another layer of identity is a cancer diagnosis, right? A health, any kind of thing that's impacting your health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so depending upon how you take your diagnosis, and sometimes people have a great amount of shame around it, or sometimes there's fear and they don't want to speak it out. Our family of origin is a really big predictor of that too. Sometimes we don't talk about things like that outside, right? And so if I already am having some belonging, I don't want to say issues, but challenges, right? Like with feeling seen or feeling connected to people, even if I'm around a lot of people, well, if I've got another layer of my identity that's making me feel different than, right? So, and depending upon who you are, you know that people may feel sorry for you. And that's like, oh, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. Or, you know what I mean? And so there are so many layers that come with each identity. With being a woman, there are a lot of things that come around with that I would never know, right? And I can listen and I can have empathy, but I just won't know. So if you have a diagnosis and you feel like you're the only, that can be really, really isolating. And so we've got to work even harder then to find community and keep connection. It's so important.
You know, I love the word layers. I love the word layers because it feels like a compound effect, right?
Yeah.
So you talk about woman, you talk about, you know, diagnosis, woman and diagnosis, and God knows whatever, maybe weight, your body weight. So you're in this other camp.
Neurodiversity.
Exactly. You and I are both Black, right? But you're male and I'm female, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to have different experiences, even though we share the same color.
100%.
You know, I have been diagnosed, you're not. So there's another layer. And we tell you it's very complex, you know, and you know, it's easy to lose that sense of who you are. For those people who have had a diagnosis, like you said, some people experience shame. Some people experience, you know, powerlessness. You know, it just depends. And so how does one re-engage even when you've had a diagnosis? You know, if I was to hire you as my belonging coach and I said, you know, Jarrod, I feel like I've lost my sense of belonging because of these different factors. How do you then advise me to reconnect?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So that question, it would all be about you, right? So it would be, I have maybe a list of here are places that you can go. Because I would start with, what are the things that you like to do, right? Like, have you lost yourself, or have you cut yourself off from the things that feel good for you? And in truth, there are things that I will tell you that at some point, I might say, this is beyond belonging coach. This might go into a clinician that you need to see.
Right.
But that comes after talking. But what I absolutely would stress is, like, there are communities of people who do share some of the identity markers. So where I couldn't understand the diagnosis, there are people out there who could, and they've got groups specifically for that reason. I might tell them to tune into TTalks because, and the reason it's funny, because you made me think of, there's a woman, her name is Jackie, and she started, it was a weekly call-in where people just dialed in for an hour on their lunch hour on Fridays, and they just had community around. She'd post a topic and they would get to speak about it. And it costed no money. But it was something that, and I think she truthfully did it for herself initially, because she was looking for community. So whatever you're comfortable with is where I would go. So, like, there are people who would not feel comfortable reaching out to strangers, right? But maybe it would be a one-on-one kind of situation that would feel good, right? But I encourage that person to find somebody that understands, where they feel like they've got a close relationship with, to broach that. But it looks different on everyone.
Yeah. Yep. Sarah says, I need a belonging coach. Jarrod. How do we learn more about how we get connected to him as a coach?
First I gotta figure out where I gotta send the check to Sarah. Like,
Sarah, I actually put his website in the chat earlier at the top of the comment bar, because Jarrod proudly launched his website today. So, you know, for anyone wanting to get a hold of Jarrod, it's in the top here. It says thebelongingguy.com.
Very easy.
And you can also follow him on here. Jarrod, there was another question which we're going to talk about, you know, based on your work at Google in the past, right? Which is the intersection of health equity and tech. Explain that to us.
Yeah, so it's funny. That was one of the reasons why I even wanted Google. Was my dream job. Like that was the company that I wanted to get into. And funny story is, I used to, on my front door, there was a whiteboard that I had near it, and I wrote Google, so I would pass it every day. It was my version of like having it get in my subconscious, and so people are like, "You manifested," and I'm like, maybe. But they do so much in the aspects of health. I mean, if you talk about partnerships that they create for like health equity and research around that, and one of the things that I love about Google is it's never about boom, here's the solve, right? Like, and there absolutely are tons of solves, excuse me. But what it's based in hearing what people need, hearing what people want, what's servicing the people best, and partnering with places that are actually doing the work. So Google is genius and an expert in many things. But they also see where it's like, oh, let's partner with this group, like Northwestern Medical. They partnered with, so AI was being big. And I know that if you've turned on your television or radio or on LinkedIn, you've heard about AI lately.
Yes.
Well, they'd started research to figure out if there was a way that AI models could actually help reduce the time to diagnosis and catch breast cancer earlier. And so they really are leaning in a lot. I have a website that you should go to, belonging.google. So it all comes back to belonging. But belonging.google, and see some of the work that they're doing in society. I have to say, I worked in the cloud marketing department, so I wasn't directly related to any of the Google Health things, but these are things that are all externally available for you to see. But it's really exciting work.
I just put a website in, and I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
As a Black man now, okay? So Black men in society, I would say it can be challenging at best, right? You've heard the terms driving while Black. You've heard the term eating while Black, dining while Black, right?
Absolutely.
And so as you're launching this, and as a Black entrepreneur, and we talk about layers and intersectionality, how do you handle the narrative around being a Black man? How do you navigate that narrative and still remain positive as you are? And remember too, here's the unfortunate thing. So if you're a Black man and you're positive, you're called something else, right? So there's all this, it's like, where do you win? So how do you drown out the noise of being a Black man? How do you
Sharon, we're close to the end. You're going to give me this one? Like,
I told you, I don't can the questions. And
No, all right. I love this question. There's so many places I could go. And so I'm going to need you to bring me back in case I go a little off the rails at all. Okay.
Okay.
So the way that I even operate in my work is there's like, I separate myself. There's two Jarods, and I'm not saying that there's any kind of like, that's not a neurodiversity thing. It's a Jarod the human and Jarod the practitioner, right? And so when I'm in practitioner mode, Jarod the human, some of the things that Jarod the human feels and things, they inform the practitioner, but they can't be what's leading. And I'll give you an example. So say if there's somebody who has a really a view that I think that Jarod the human thinks is a really bad view to have. Like, I don't agree with it. That's not how I feel. That's not who I am. Jarod the practitioner has to go, let me listen first. What's this about? Right. And so that's part of the training that I've done. So to navigate in these spaces, the places where that causes an interesting disconnect that I actually do correct people. And it doesn't happen so much anymore because I'm also a gay man. So there's a piece of my identity that is gay as well. And it happens more on the gay side where people will be like, oh, you're not gay like the other people, or you're not. And I'm like, oh, no, yes, I am. Like, you know what I mean? Like it is. And so there was a time when people would say like, and I know that I get access and privilege because I speak differently. And like, I pulled out the collared shirt that I had in my closet for a TTalk today. But I'm really quick to remind people that just because I show up this way doesn't make me any less of the thing. It's just maybe a version of it that you haven't seen before. And you need to know that within each identity, there is a richness. There's more diversity within an identity than there is from my identity to the next. And so
No, because you've said so much, and
it's your fault.
So interesting. So interesting. And I'm trying to keep all the information in my head. I love something. Okay, so I'm going to go back to what you first said, which I really like. And I think this applies to everyone, whether you're a black man, black woman, white, it doesn't matter. You said something very interesting. I think all professionals should hear. Mm-hmm. You have Jarrod, the human, Sharon, the human, and Sharon, the professional.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How I feel about some stuff in my humanness, yes, it may inform some of the stuff over here. However, I have to process them differently. Yeah. So I may not agree with you and your views and whatever over here as a human. I may not think it's right. But as a professional, I'm here to serve. I'm here to listen, and I'm here to serve. That's my modus operandi. Yeah. Second thing you said was this. We talk about layers. You talk about being a black man and all of that, and being a black man who is gay. So as a black man who is gay, there's an expectation that he's a black gay man. He's supposed to act a certain way.
Right.
And what you're saying is, yeah, I have my button-up shirt on today for TTalks. Yeah. And I speak the way I speak because I'm an intelligent person. I'm an educated man. Yeah. It doesn't mean that I'm not a gay black man.
Right.
The way how so you want to, the world wants to classify a gay black man as
in a box.
Yeah. So when they see you, a gay black man, in this other box, it's like, what am I supposed to be doing? How am I supposed to be thinking? And I think the teaching here is so important about judgment and boxes and presumptions and presuppositions. Yeah. I think if we want to embrace belonging, right? Just as a society, we got to really check our own internal biases, because it's so hard. It's so hard, for people, right? When there's such intolerance, don't you think? And agreed. I know there's comments coming in. I'm just Jarrod Energy's infection span. Can't wait to see you speak on our total health conferences. Kayla says, loving this. Sarah said, Jarrod, I'm booking you from. Sarah has a son who's an African American young man. So he's half black, half white. But in America,
that makes half white. One drop rule. Look
at Obama. She said, what an unexpected gift from today's teacher. You are a light, Jarrod, and your light is so bright. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. So I had to cut you there, Jarrod, because I just thought it was so important that we don't run past all of what you're saying about, just the expectation, the boxes, and people's confusion that you're you, but you're not like the other guy over there. Yeah. And I have to just say this one thing. It might be a little bit unpopular, but it's how you would hear this term, right? As a black person, you'd hear this. You're not like other blacks.
Yeah.
And I know you've heard it. You're not like other blacks. What is other?
Uh-oh, did I lose you?
Yeah, I hear the term. You're not black. You're Jamaican.
Right.
But it's still black. And it goes back to, people's supposition, and you even trying to find the different layers, like, which layer am I showing up in today? I'm a black woman from Jamaica with this, with that.
Right.
Where's the box that fits my belonging?
Oh, all right. So Sharon, so there's so much there. One of the pieces of that is about the notion that, like, the different layers of your identity, and it's like code switching, right? Like, who do I need to be in this environment right now? And it's funny because the conversation that we're having, Jarrod, the practitioner, definitely leads with, it is okay. It's okay that you come in with your preconceived notion, but be open to have that shatter because it's wrong, right? Yes. Like there's a lot. Now, Jarrod, the human, is like, what do you mean I'm not black? Like, you've not lived this life. Trust me, I know I'm black, right? You know what I mean? Right. And there's those sorts of things where I assume positive intent is what Jarrod the practitioner does, right? To a fault. And that's how Jarrod the practitioner gets around and that sort of thing. And so it's about opening people up because we're all so busy, right? We've got work and family and trying to have a good time. And you know what I mean? And so all the things. And so when you insert something that maybe I do this for a living. It's how I pay my rent, is leaning into this work. But I know that for the way that many places handle this work is it's a 1 hour training once a year, right? And so if I'm doing all the other hours in a year and I only have to think about it for one, then I'm going to give you a little grace in that you get it wrong. But let's be open to getting it right.
All right. And I know we've been on here for a while, but I wanted to just touch on one other point here. Sure. You just mentioned it. The aspect of code switching. Mm-hmm. And just a thought of code switching. And this is people's reality, right? People, especially underrepresented groups, right? Mm-hmm. It's code switching to fit in. Psychologically, and I know you're not a psychologist, but psychologically, what does that do to a person's sense of belonging when you have to code switch to fit this environment? Right. What does that do to a person psychologically? And what does it do to their sense of belonging? Like, who am I?
Forgive my memory, but I think it was Kayla who said she feels the most together with her, most belonging when she's with her sisters.
Yes.
That fitting in versus that expanse that you did. If you've got a code switch, and there is code switching that I think is, there's levels to it. There's some that is just kind of, it's not as bad. And maybe it's like, I want Sharon to understand me more, so I'll use this vernacular. I'll use that. Like, think of a clinician, right? Mm-hmm. If they're talking to somebody who's not gone through medical school, the code switching isn't about like changing or being, it's about helping understand, right? Like what the communication is and how can I get this information across? So there's different ways that people code switch and different reasons why. But if it's for one of those reasons so that they can fit in more or be accepted, then that's that fitting in. That's that closing in. That's that. And you can extrapolate it. I imagine, to your point, I am not a psychologist, but I would imagine that you're telling yourself that there's a piece of me that's not good enough in this context. There's a piece of me that doesn't fit, that isn't valued, isn't, you know what I mean? Or isn't worthy of being in this. We could even go in a tangent of imposter syndrome about that too. And again, psychological effects I can't talk about, but I can talk about imposter syndrome. You know what I mean? And that. So there's a lot of branches to it.
And it goes back to what you said earlier about fitting in, when you said, and the code switching reminds me of this, when you said, we shrink when we try to fit in. Yeah. we actually shrink.
Yeah. Can I just add really one other thing fast about code switching is I love talking about it as belonging because it truly is something that all of us do. Heterosexual white men with power even do it, right? Depending upon the context that they're in, sometimes they feel like I need to lower my voice and show more authority and executive presence if that's not their natural, right? Or if I'm in this group, I've got to feel cool, got to feel cooler because maybe I'm not so, you know what I mean? I've got to have the right, whatever that is. And I don't mean to pigeonhole because there's many ways that any of us could code switch, but it's one of the things that truthfully we all do. Underrepresented groups, I certainly am closer to that experience. And I know that we carry a lot of that more as just a part of who we are. But I do want to speak to it being like something. I guess that's Jarrod, the practitioner, saying it's all of us too.
Right. To some degree, we all code switch to fit.
Yeah.
All right, Jarrod, tell us who is your ideal. You just launched your website today. Sure. You're in business. You've been doing this work for a long time. Obviously, you are inspiring and you're passionate, and this is what you love to do. Yeah. So tell us who is your ideal customer? Who is your ideal client? If someone says, who are you looking to serve?
Sure. So I break it up in a couple of ways. The way that I talk about what I do, it's really easy. I think bite, snack, meal, right? Like there are different ways that you can engage with, and my mind goes to food all the time, but also bite, snack, meals. So the bite, those are the easy, free, like quick wins that anybody can grab onto. Like if you check out my LinkedIn page, follow me on LinkedIn, subscribe to my newsletter on my website. Those are like really quick, easy things. So like that's not about the business, but everybody gets a piece of that. The snack part, so that's like a 1 hour like speaking gig or a workshop where we kind of understand what belonging is. I think that sort of thing is perfect for employee resource groups, small to mid-sized companies, or even in larger companies, a team, right? So if I'm a leader of a team of 30 people, 50 people, let's bring in this guy, you know what I mean? Small to mid-sized companies don't typically have someone doing this type of work though. Larger companies, might. So small to mid-sized companies. And then there's this piece of my business that truly is for places like dance studios or gymnastics academies or institutions where teachers or faculty need to take care of students. The world has evolved. And so the type of people that we're getting in, the type of people that we're servicing and educating and supposed to be giving service to are different than they used to be, right? Like we talk now about gender, we talk about race differently than we did 20 years ago. And so I help faculties and staffs understand belonging principles. And then that meal is like the longer partnership where like executives do. So there's a couple of groups.
All right. Well, we wish you, just great success in this business. We wish you many speaking engagements, etc. Again, we ourselves would probably be tapping on you for that. So we're called TTalks, and we've had honestly, our T cells have been stimulated all this entire 41 minutes. We've been stimulated, but leave our audience with this, right? Mm-hmm. If you're someone out there and you're just not feeling a sense of belonging, give us your best, takeaway, your best thing, like, hey man, this is what you need to do.
Go create it for someone else. Take a step that creates belonging for someone else. One that'll give you an instant boost. I think it'll help you feel value. It'll create connection for you with someone else. And find somebody that you feel some sameness with. You feel some, because I think we all have that. So those would be my two. I would say, do not, whatever you do, don't sit in that. Don't stay there.
And what you just described, Jarrod, is the typical golden rule: do unto others as you would have done unto yourself, right? And so we're gonna leave it like that for today. Praying a double blessing over you, Jarrod. And
Sarah, this is for you. A little hug there.
He gave you an air hug, Sarah. Jarrod, it was a wonderful just pleasure talking to you today. And Peter was saying create belonging for someone else. Love that. I think it's a great takeaway. You should probably make a Canva post, Jarrod. Create belonging for someone else. Put that on your page. Create belonging for someone else, and with a little bit of a post for your LinkedIn page. So
when you see it, just know that it came from
here.
Just
know it came from TTalks. You tag TTalks.
Can I thank James Gormley too? Because James Gormley is somebody who reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think this would be great for you." And so, shout out to James. Thank you so much, James, for this.
Shout out to James. And Raina says, "Great session to listen to as I work today." Thank you, guys. Thank everyone who was in the feed, who participated in the chat and gave us questions. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jarrod. Stay a little bit, Jarrod, while I say bye-bye to everyone, and I'll talk to you back in the green room. Take care, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for the next episode of TTalks with Total Health. Take care. Bye.